I. The hidden layer beneath the spandex. In the summer of 2000, a scrappy superhero film with no A-list stars and a modest $75 million budget landed in theaters and quietly rewrote the rules of modern cinema. X-Men didn't just launch a franchise, it resurrected an entire genre thought dead after the campy excesses of the late 90s. But what if I told you the film's real power wasn't in its mutants or its action, but in a series of creative gambles, personal sacrifices, and thematic choices most fans never noticed? What if the reason it still resonates isn't because of Wolverine's claws, but because it smuggled a plea for tolerance into a summer blockbuster? Let's pull back the curtain on the production that defied studio skepticism, reshaped superhero storytelling, and hid its boldest message in plain sight. This is the detail that changes how you see it, not just as comic book spectacle, but as a quiet act of cultural defiance. 2. Origins in a skeptical era. The late 1990s were not kind to superhero films. After the neon-drenched misfire of Batman and Robin in 1997, studios treated capes like radioactive waste, too toxic to touch. Marvel Comics, once a pop culture titan, was bankrupt, selling off film rights like fire sale inventory just to stay afloat. Into this void stepped 20th Century Fox, which had acquired the X-Men rights in 1994 but sat on them for years, unsure how to translate a sprawling, socially conscious comic into a viable movie. Enter Bryan Singer, a 34-year-old director fresh off the indie hit The Usual Suspects, with zero experience in visual effects or action choreography, but a deep personal connection to the X-Men's core theme, otherness. It was Singer who insisted the film open not with a battle, but with grainy black-and-white footage of Auschwitz, a jarring, bold choice that immediately signaled this wasn't your typical comic adaptation. He saw the X-Men not as flashy vigilantes, but as metaphors for marginalized communities, LGBTQ+ individuals, immigrants, religious minorities. At a time when mainstream Hollywood avoided overt political messaging in blockbusters, Singer and screenwriter David Hayter crafted a script that wore its allegory like a second skin, visible if you looked, invisible if you just wanted explosions. The studio, nervous but desperate, greenlit a test reel. When it played well with test audiences, especially teens who saw themselves in Rogue's isolation or Cyclops' repressed power, Fox gave the go-ahead. But the real battle was just beginning. 3. The persona paradox. Hugh Jackman was not the first choice to play Wolverine. In fact, he wasn't even on the short list. Dougray Scott, a Scottish actor known for Mission Impossible Assault, had been cast, but a scheduling conflict with that Tom Cruise vehicle left the role suddenly vacant just weeks before filming. Jackman, an Australian theater actor with no international profile, was flown in as a last-minute replacement. He was taller than the comic's stubby berserker, less grizzled, and, by his own admission, terrified. "I thought I'd be fired by lunch on day 2, he later confessed. Yet that very insecurity became Wolverine's secret weapon. Jackman channeled his anxiety into a performance that balanced feral intensity with unexpected vulnerability. Watch his eyes in the scene where he tells Rogue, "You're not alone." There's a tremor beneath the bravado, a man who's spent his life running, finally choosing to stay. Meanwhile, Patrick Stewart, already iconic as Captain Picard, faced a different kind of paradox. Cast as Professor X, he brought Shakespearean gravitas to a role many assumed would be a wise old mentor cliché. But Stewart, who had long advocated for LGBTQ+ rights, saw Charles Xavier as a quiet revolutionary, a man using intellect and empathy to fight prejudice in a world that fears difference. Stewart later revealed he modeled Xavier's calm authority on real-life civil rights leaders, not comic book tropes. The cost behind the glow? For Jackman, it was physical, grueling weight training, stunt rehearsals that left him bruised, and the pressure of carrying a franchise on untested shoulders. For Stewart, it was emotional, the weight of representing hope in a narrative steeped in fear. Both men knew they weren't just playing characters, they were embodying an idea. And ideas, especially in Hollywood, are fragile things. I vows. The decision that changed everything. Early drafts of the script leaned heavily into spectacle. Magneto's plan involved a giant machine on Liberty Island that would mutate world leaders, a concept straight from the comics, but narratively bloated. Then came a pivotal meeting in Singer's office. Hader, Singer, and producer Lauren Shuler Donner argued for hours. Finally, Singer made the call. Strip it down. Make the stakes personal, not planetary. Magneto wouldn't target politicians, he'd target children. Specifically, Senator Kelly, a vocal anti-mutant demagogue, would be forcibly mutated as a warning. And Rogue, the innocent teenager just discovering her powers, would be the key to stopping him. This shift did more than tighten the plot. It deepened the film's moral complexity. Magneto wasn't a cartoon villain. He was a Holocaust survivor who believed preemptive violence was the only defense against extinction. His plan wasn't about domination, but survival. The final script reframed the entire conflict as a debate between Xavier's faith in coexistence and Magneto's trauma-driven pragmatism, a philosophical duel rarely seen in action films of the era. Even the climactic battle on Liberty Island became intimate. Wolverine fighting Sabretooth not for glory, but to protect Rogue. Storm using her powers not to destroy, but to create a path to safety. This wasn't good versus evil. It was two visions of justice colliding. And that choice, that refusal to simplify, became the film's backbone. V. On-set reality. Check filming. X-Men was less glamorous than the trailers suggested. The production operated on a tight 60-day schedule with a budget stretched thin by practical effects, elaborate costumes, and Toronto's unpredictable weather. The X-Mansion interiors were shot in an abandoned psychiatric hospital, its cold, institutional corridors lending an eerie authenticity to Xavier's school, but offering little comfort to the cast. Ian McKellen, playing Magneto, arrived on set, still reeling from the recent death of his partner. He channeled that grief into Eric Lensher's haunted intensity, but the emotional toll was real. McKellen later admitted that the scene where Magneto lifts the police car with his mind, filmed in a single take using hidden wires and precise choreography, took 17 attempts, each one draining him further. Meanwhile, Anna Paquin, just 17 and fresh off her Oscar win for The Piano, struggled with Rogue's emotional arc. The character's inability to touch anyone without absorbing their life force was more than a plot device. It was a metaphor for adolescent isolation, and Paquin leaned into it with raw honesty. But the physical demands were brutal. Hours in makeup for the white-streaked hair, restrictive costumes, and the infamous ice truck sequence, where she's kidnapped and nearly frozen to death. She developed mild hypothermia during filming and had to be wrapped in thermal blankets between takes. The studio, meanwhile, hovered nervously. Fox executives sent daily memos questioning the film's lack of humor and too much talking. At one point, they demanded more quips for Wolverine. Singer refused. "This isn't Spider-Man," he told them. "These people are scared. They should sound like it." The tension was palpable, but so was the cast's commitment. They weren't making a comic book movie. They were making a statement, and statements don't come cheap. 6. What most fans miss rewatch X-Men today, and you'll notice details that transform the entire viewing experience. Take the opening credits, not flashy logos or booming music, but a slow crawl of newspaper headlines. Mutant rights protest turns violent. Parents fear school integration, all fabricated for the film, yet eerily familiar. They establish the world's hostility before a single mutant appears. Then there's the use of color. Xavier's mansion is bathed in warm golds and soft blues, sanctuary hues. Magneto's lair? Cold steel, sharp angles, shadows that swallow light. Even the costumes tell a story. The X-Men wear sleek, unified black leather, not because it's cool, but because Singer wanted them to look like a team forged in necessity, not fashion. But the most revealing micro-detail lies in Wolverine's dog tags. Throughout the film, he never removes them. Not in the shower scene, not during fights, not even when unconscious. They're his only link to a past he can't remember, a visual anchor for his identity crisis. And in the final scene, when he leaves the mansion to find answers about his origins, he touches them one last time. It's a silent beat, easily missed, but it speaks volumes. This isn't just a man with claws, it's a man searching for a name. Most fans miss how the film's score, composed by Michael Kamen, weaves Jewish liturgical motifs into Magneto's theme, a subtle nod to his Auschwitz backstory that deepens his tragedy without a single line of dialogue. These choices didn't shout, they endured. 7. The conflict behind the scenes. X-Men was caught in a tug-of-war between art and commerce. Fox wanted a safe, crowd-pleasing action flick. Singer and his team wanted a film that asked uncomfortable questions. What does it mean to be normal? Who gets to decide? The studio pushed back hard. They objected to the Auschwitz prologue, calling it too heavy for a summer movie. Singer stood firm. If we lose that, we lose the soul of the film, he argued. He won, but barely. Then came the marketing battle. Early trailers emphasized explosions and Wolverine snarls, downplaying the film's social commentary. Fans expecting The Matrix with mutants were confused by the philosophical debates and emotional weight. Critics were divided. Some praised its intelligence, others called it talky and dour. The film opened to $54 million, strong but not record-breaking, and studio executives immediately demanded a sequel with more action, less angst. Yet within months, something shifted. Teens began quoting Xavier's line, "Just because someone is different doesn't mean they're dangerous," in school hallways. LGBTQ+ groups embraced the film as an allegory for coming out. The very elements Fox feared became its legacy. The conflict wasn't just resolved, it was vindicated. Fatade. The irony? Here's the irony no one saw coming. X-Men was dismissed by many as just another comic movie, yet it quietly laid the groundwork for the most socially conscious era in superhero cinema. Its success convinced studios that audiences would embrace complex themes wrapped in spandex, paving the way for The Dark Knight, Black Panther, even The Boys. But the deeper irony lies in its cast. Hugh Jackman, the last-minute replacement, became synonymous with Wolverine for 17 years, longer than any actor has played a superhero role. Yet he never saw himself as a superhero actor. He called it a happy accident. And then there's Magneto. Ian McKellen, a classically trained Shakespearean actor and openly gay man, played a Holocaust survivor fighting for mutant rights, and in doing so, gave voice to generations of marginalized people who saw their struggles reflected in his fury and pain. McKellen later said playing Magneto helped him process his own experiences with discrimination, turning a villain role into a vessel for healing. The film that was almost too political for its time became a lifeline for those who felt invisible. That's the irony. What Hollywood feared as risky became its greatest strength. 9. The breakthrough. X-Men didn't just succeed, it redefined success. It grossed $296 million worldwide, proving that superhero films could be both intelligent and profitable. More importantly, it changed how studios approached comic adaptations. Gone were the days of rubber suits and campy one-liners. In their place came grounded realism, character depth, and thematic ambition. The film's influence bled into every corner of pop culture. Joss Whedon cited it as inspiration for Buffy the Vampire Slayer's later seasons. Christopher Nolan studied its tone before crafting Batman Begins. Even the MCU's early films borrowed its ensemble structure and moral ambiguity. But the true breakthrough was cultural. Phrases like mutant and proud entered the lexicon. High schoolers formed X-Men clubs as safe spaces for outcasts. Teachers used the film to discuss prejudice in social studies classes. In 2001, GLAAD awarded X-Men a Media Award for its positive portrayal of marginalized identities, a first for a superhero film. It didn't just entertain, it empowered. And that's why, over 2 decades later, it still feels urgent. X ripple effects. The careers launched by X-Men read like a who's who of modern cinema. Hugh Jackman became a global star, but he never forgot the film's message, later using his platform to advocate for mental health and LGBTQ+ rights. James Marsden, as Cyclops, found new depth in a role many saw as stiff. He'd go on to balance mainstream and indie work with quiet integrity. Halle Berry, though underused as Storm, became the first black woman to lead a superhero franchise, a milestone that paved the way for Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel. Beyond the cast, the film's DNA is everywhere. The Avengers' team dynamics, modeled on the X-Men's found family ethos. Logan's gritty R-rated deconstruction of heroism, rooted in Jackman's original performance. Even non-superhero shows like Stranger Things and The Umbrella Academy owe a debt to X-Men's blend of genre thrills and emotional realism. Audiences still quote, "To me, my X-Men," with affection. Not because it's flashy, but because it represents unity in the face of division. The ripple didn't stop in 2000. It's still spreading. Shakespeare. Why it endures. So why does X-Men still matter? Because it understood something fundamental. Superhero stories aren't about powers. They're about people. The film's genius wasn't in its CGI or its fight choreography. It was in its empathy. It looked at the kid who feels like an outsider, the adult who's been told they're too much or not enough, and said, "Your difference is not a flaw. It's your strength." That message was radical in 2000. It's essential in 2025. In an age of rising intolerance, algorithmic isolation, and identity wars, X-Men remains a beacon, not because it offers easy answers, but because it dares to ask the right questions. And now, armed with these hidden layers, you'll never watch it the same way again. The claws, the capes, the catchphrases, they're just the surface. Beneath them lies a plea for compassion that's as timely today as it was 25 years ago. 12. Rewatch with fresh eyes. Watch X-Men again, not as a relic, but as a revelation. Notice the quiet glances, the loaded silences, the courage in its convictions. Then tell us in the comments, which moment hit you differently once you saw the truth beneath the surface? If this deep dive changed how you see the film, give it a like. It helps more fans discover the story behind the story. Because some messages don't fade, they evolve, and this one's just getting started.